Hey, what is up guys? masterleaf here, back to do another game highlight, and today I've got an exceptional game. I keep saying that in all my videos, but recently I've been having so many great games. All the individual game videos that I posted in the past month, I can say that I'm pretty proud of them. They're very good games, and I recommend that you guys watch all of them if you haven't already. I particularly like the one I had versus Senna with those purifiers, but I'm not going to spoil any more of that. Anyways, this is going to be on Tiberium Rift. It's going to be ZOCOM versus Scrin, and it's definitely not your typical ZOCOM versus Scrin. I can tell you that for sure. So let's just go through the thought process at the beginning of a ZOCOM versus Scrin game. I'm scouting the top and the bottom of the map for disintegrators because there is always the risk of being rushed by desynths, and desynths have the most DPS in the game per cost. It's between the flame tank and the desynth squad, but obviously both units are better at different certain tasks. Flame tanks though, they are game winning of course, because you can get one into your opponent's base and that is it, the game's over, as the case was in that 2 vs 2 series that I watched 2 days ago with BartJones and BartJones teaming up against Space and Rex. That was one of the best 2 vs 2 series I've seen in a long time. I streamed it and casted it live. You can find it on my Twitch channel. I may edit it for YouTube, but I think those replays were sent to Cybert. Can't stress enough how good that series was. I really think it deserves to be on YouTube. There's been several amazing 2 vs 2 series. Overall, R20, I know I'm biased, but I'm going to say it has been delivering on the good games lately. I really do think it has been providing better entertainment when it comes to replays than previous community patches. No thanks to the changes made with the Hexapod and the Mammoth tank being better now. Juggernaut's no longer the unit to build in all scenarios for GDI, which was undesired for many players. They wanted Mammoth tanks to have a spot, and they certainly do now. The Mammoth versus Jug meta is way more in favor of the Mammoth tank. Great news for ZOCOM because the changes affect their Mammoth tanks the most, because it's the turret rotation speed and the rockets damage that was buffed. Those two things also make the ZOCOM Mammoth better. So I'm doing a APC rocket push here, something unorthodox already happening in this game. I have an APC engineer in the top of the map. I'm going for a bunch of these APCs with AP ammo. I'm upgrading AP ammo so I can deal with gunwalkers a little better. There's no rig involved with this strategy. I just want to confirm that I got my speakers off just in case there's like some reverb in the background, but that is not going to be a thing. So I need to try and time this push correctly, try and distract my opponent with 5 APCs while I send in that APC engineer in the corner to his refinery. I'm hoping to get his 3rd refinery. That would be the goal. And if that does not work, then obviously I'm going to be put behind significantly. This is a risky push for me to do. I am foregoing my refinery for a tier 3, just as I did in that Dust Bowl game. By the way, that APC will be uncovered, unfortunately, so that's not going to get any refineries anytime soon. But I'm going for a tier 3 just because of how good it worked in that tournament Dust Bowl game against Senna. Right, I built a mask specifically to harvest the Tiberium field of my opponent, the 3rd field. But I am sacrificing a significant portion of my income for this. APC's targeting that plasma missile battery, not the thing I want them to shoot at, but they will close in onto those dev tanks. I evac the APC so I don't lose those missile squads, and 2 dev tanks fell, so I got my value out of those 4 or 5 APCs, even though the refinery did not fall. Securing the kill on those 2 death tanks is going to pay for this attack. And if I can get the Mecha Pete head, that's going to be even better. And whilst my opponent was distracted on that, I was able to capture a refinery with a further APC engineer. That was not the same one as the one I sent up to the north. You can see I've got a decal for the GDI mine drop. It's no longer showing the NOD logo, because that was just, you know, a little bit of OCD. I didn't like seeing NOD logos on GDI mine drops. And I was inquiring players about this, and they thought it was better looking than the one that was there before. I was contemplating having the GDI logo, having just the mine logo in the center with no faction logo, and we ultimately deemed that one to be the best. So I get my Marv out. It's hard to squeeze out a Marv on a small tip field such as this. My expansion, unlike Dust Bowl, is very far away from my original base, and that means that I'm going to have to long leech Tiberium. It's going to take longer to bring in these Tiberium loads compared to Dust Bowl. I can't do the same strategy as I did on Dust, where I can't establish a refinery on my fields. I need to absolutely do that on this map. Just taking a sip of water here and now. And I do unfortunately lose a harvester there. Bad rallying, but it would have been nice to get those crystals on that spike. Blue Tiberium I'm kind of foregoing at the moment, but I am securing that Tiberium field in the north with the Marv. In R20, Marvs can Marvest without bugging. You can collect Tiberium and not have it ever stop. It sometimes in vanilla would drive through the Tiberium and not actually collect any of it there. And because I didn't go for my 4th refinery, this play is going to allow my Hammerhead on 3 refineries to take out this Mastermind. So if I had responded or did any build other than what I'm doing now, this Mastermind would have went unanswered. Could have lost the tier 3, but this Hammerhead that I snuck out on 3 refineries was clutch. It's a good job I did that. I think most players in this instance would go for their 4th refinery, but I knew I couldn't really, or I had no need to go 4 refineries if I'm harvesting the tip in the north of a Marv, and also harvesting from an expansion with 1 ref, because I'm just going to be floating tons of resources then. And indeed that was the case. This Marv was idle for a second, and just as I did on Tournament Dust Bowl, I'm going to go for a bunch of zone heads, and I'm going to equip them with the Zone Raider. Sonic Mid is excellent against Mecha Pete also. Those mechas equipped with the disc segments, so those are lethal against Hammerheads. My opponent will spot the Hammerheads here. That's unfortunate. I do have a Scrin Harvester, which is kind of cool to see. Supposedly bugs less, but in R20B, which is the current version of R20 in the time of recording, harvester bugging is at an all-time minimum, because harvesters now move out of the way if something is trying to path through them, but it does not affect their harvesting. So when they're collecting Tiberium, they don't move out of the way. That was the behavior I was afraid of. But at the dock entrance, if a harvester is trying to dock and one's blocking it, it will just push the one that's blocking it out of the way, and it seems to respond much better than before. Zone Raider right there, a little bit out in the open. I'm just waiting to establish a nice force of zone heads. It is an expensive strategy. It's about 20, so it's $1,500 for the Hammerhead, and then further $1,300 for the Zone Raider. So that's $2,800 per zone head. That's almost the cost of an Annihilator tripod, and you can't really get 20 or so out on the map, or if you did, that would be all of the resources that you could harvest in that game. And it's not good putting all your eggs in the one basket, which is what you could do as ZOCOM. Now you'll notice that I'm not going for Firehawks, because I want some combat power on this map, and I'd rather use these in case I get hit by tripods, because usually when you do the Firehawk build, your opponent gets 2 or 3 tripods out and you have little to defend against them, and that with a well-timed stasis shield on your defenses can wreck your base as ZOCOM. So even though the tech center is a valid target with Firehawks, you have the chance of losing your army to the Scrin player's forces that he's accumulated. That's more likely to happen now with the shock troopers being better, which is Scrin and Reaper 17's backup option, or even travelers when they lose their tier 3. Yeah, this Marv is moving through. Shard launchers online, look how powerful that is. Even with the nerf, shard launcher turrets, just insane. This Marv pushing forward. I'm hoping to keep my opponent distracted while I evac these Zone Raiders. Zone Raiders not upgraded with power packs. However, I can do some significant damage with the scanner packs, which do increase the range of the Zone Raiders. Increases the range by enough to just about kite buzzer hives. The splash damage is insane. However, that will be stasis shielded, and the Marv will be focused down, so this attack is going horribly for me. And as you see in the south, my Tiberium field has almost depleted. Hexapod still lives, none of the Devastator warships fell, and this attack was completely and utterly destroyed. I have not seen a better hold, actually, of a ZOCOM push like that. So my opponent had everything that he needed to stop that attack there. So I am now going to put these Zone Raiders back in the hammerheads just so I can have a fast response to what my opponent builds. I have this MCV here. Considering my options, I'm going slingshots with tungsten shells so I can destroy the Devastators. That was for my push so I could deal with those dev ships, but it was too late. So I have to make do with what I have now. I'm not going to give up. A lot of players after a failed push such as that would give up, but I'm going to continue fighting, and I'm going to see where this will take me. Eradicator Hexbob will be lamed now. It's a very valid thing for Scrin to do. Just lane that Hexapod and sit behind a super weapon. So there's a rift generator out here. I'm going to put a combat support airfield down. It's a cheaper way to repair my units. It's only $500, and in R20 you get a partial rifleman squad for selling it off. So you get 3 repair drones in this 1.02 plus patch, plus the extra scout when you sell that building. Not to mention it has a nice radar animation now. Did not have that in vanilla. EA did not complete this game. So I'm going to take my chances here. I don't see anything in the fog of war, but I run through this base and I managed to snipe 2 of those Devastator warships right away. I'm going to pay for it though with 4 of my slingshots, so that was sort of expensive, but I can accept that trade. 3 slingshots down for 2 Devastator warships. I'm gonna be happy about that. Now my opponent does have an eco advantage, so I can't afford to trade 1 for 1. I have to be more cost effective. And I fly into those shard AAs. Look at that, just 1 shard AA battery, and my hammerheads take huge damage. Splash damage is insane. So nothing's really working out for me here. I got a mammoth tank there, but you know, 1 mammoth tank is not exactly going to win me a game, is it? And now this Hexbot is just milking experience from my base, destroying my base, and my MCV is still around. It is packed up in the south. Kind of forgotten about it, but I've been trying to inflict damage whilst this all has been happening. So I'm going to go ahead and send these Zone Raiders to the north, because I did probe that area before with my hammerheads and saw that there wasn't any anti-infantry defenses. So let's go over there now, and with these 2 slingshots that I have, if the Devastator warships decide to respond, then perhaps I can sweep in with those slingshots and catch them out of position. But so far so good. The hammerheads are moving in, and I can always just rally the hammerheads to that location and then just evac all of them. That would be the best way to approach this. So yeah, I used the hammerheads as sort of like transport units in this case, which will allow my army to get from one point of the map to another extremely quickly. I've even got a Commando mixed in with this force of Zone Raiders. That's a significant amount of Zone Raiders. 9 Zone Raider squads and a Commando. Buzzer Swarm support power just gets completely demolished. 2 buzzer hives being spawned at the same time, but with that commando there to provide anti-infantry support, these buzzer hives are going to be of limited use, and I found an excellent opening in this base. You can see how powerful these zone raiders are. Insane range, insane DPS, and even this commando, as you guys know, incredibly good against enemy structures. Mastermind can't respond to this because a bad fate awaits it if it does decide to do so. Hexblood comes in, does crush a couple of my forces. I tried to take out the ground control that he has there with that commando because it was only the nerve center that was providing it, which means if I destroy that, he can no longer place down buzzer hives. I got 2 slingshots. I'm kind of gutted I didn't repair those up, but not to fear, because I did anticipate that the weakness to my army would be more Devastator warships. That's why I have been queuing more of them. Zone raiders out for me. Riflemen as well. And this force just has not been countered yet. It's very difficult as Scrin, by the way, to counter an army like this. Even gunwalkers en masse against this many zone raiders will get splashed down. But the Devastator warships, man, look at that. One shot and I lose several squads of zone raiders. Commando may want to get out of there. I think he's been promoted to veteran, so he's going to have more armor than your typical commando. Let's see if I can maybe make use of that more in the future. But yeah, I saw those Devastator warships. I'm going to move the slingshots in. Maybe I can do a similar run by as I did before and find these Devastator warships using the speed advantage of the slingshot. They have decent armor as well relative to their speed. It's sort of like a stealth tank. Tungsten shells makes them a far greater unit. I remember Bikrush made a tier list for the slingshot, and I think he rated it like an F tier when it's completely not. I mean, maybe without AP ammo it's bad, but it's not an expensive upgrade to purchase, and it doesn't take long compared to the other upgrades for the GDI faction. Now, I have been allowing my first Tiberium field to purposely regrow. I've been taking Tiberium off of this third field because if this game drags on, and it's going to be a miracle if I can even sustain the super weapon and the army that my opponent has, but imagine if that were the case. I'd have a full Tiberium field at my main to harvest from because I've been letting it harvest. I haven't been setting any harvesters on that field. Another Bartjones Swarm support power gets used, and because that tier 3 was destroyed, there's no phase because I destroyed the nerve center and the tier 3 with the thing. Now, EMP grenades in this patch do have a slightly shorter delay now. So the reason that EMP worked was because it's more responsive now. Previously, it wouldn't work well. So hexal aiming is far easier to stop as GDI. You can't just go in with a lone Eradicate hexbot and expect to win the game anymore. That just does not happen. But the ability to teleport your hexbot and perform that tactic is still the same, but not as extreme as it once was. And I think that is a positive change overall for the game. As you can see, I'm recycling the Armory Heal ability where it's going to replenish the dead squad members of my zone raiders. And I'm doing a trick where I'm waypointing in and out of the armory to just replenish the members and not heal the squad up, because I have an upgrade called the Power Packs, which I'm upgrading, or I may have already upgraded, and that will heal my zone raiders when idle over time. And it's actually quite fast now in this community patch. And I'm aware of these changes, because of course I did the patch, so of course I would be aware of it. Now, there is a big dilemma here. My opponent has a Rift Generator, which is the most powerful super weapon in the game, which is about to fire off, and you're going to see soon the army as well, which he has, is enormous. It's simply overwhelming, so it's going to be almost impossible for me to contend with this. The hammerheads I have to split up. My army is separated in groups. I can no longer have them in one location. Once units are in rifts, you can't get them out. That's the effect of the Rift Generator. It sucks units in like it's a black hole. I mean, it sort of is, but it opens a rift in space, so to speak. MCV gets captured by that mastermind. Unfortunate. But yeah, The tier 3 is around for me in a precarious position, but I kind of anticipated that my opponent would go that way with his army, so I put the tier 3 there anyways, just to buy myself some time, and my opponent has yet to use that super weapon. There's so many gunwalkers here. There's even a drone ship for anti-air support, so these hammerheads are just going to be struggling to achieve very much. Gunwalkers en route to respond to these hammerheads here, and I've got 3 or 4 more back there, so I'm hoping my opponent uses the rift. Maybe he thought that there was more hammerheads than there were. That's why I spread these units out, and I lost 4 zone heads, which is a big deal. That was a huge loss. Even though that wasn't the best super weapon in the world for him, it's not the worst either. I've got more hammerheads back there as well, but now I can reform my line and use these zone heads once more. So I no longer have to fear about being hit by a rift gen, but my opponent is pushing me with a drone ship. I got 2 mammoth tanks back there, 2 mammoths and 10 hammerheads. My goal here would be to stop that drone ship from deploying and getting some shard AA turrets down, because then the game would certainly be over. Look how many gunwalkers I still have to deal with. Hammerheads there taking huge damage. Mammoth tanks doing what they can. Zone heads also just avoiding death, because those plasma missile batteries are coming down. Look at that damage. 1 hammerhead survives. Those were nerfed, of course. The clip size of the shard turret was almost halved, but even so, it's a still insane power upgrade for the base defense, just not like 400% more damage. It's more like 300% now, because the reload time's still 1 second. I tried to get that Commando. Unfortunately, the mastermind still lives. Maybe I can secure 1 more tripod at the expense of 1 hammerhead, but fortunately that was not the one that was garrisoned up with the zone raiders. And I know several of those hammerheads are wounded. You can see the texture does switch. In the vanilla game, there is no such thing as a damaged hammerhead texture with ceramic armor, so that definitely helps me visualize the situation with my force. This is a very precarious situation. I don't think I can do anything more with my hammerheads, so I'm going to evac all of these zone raiders, because he's built a huge line of plasma missile batteries of shards, and he's right next to my one and only war factory. I can't really retreat now. I have to push and hope to win from this situation. The odds are stacked against me. I have 2 mammoth tanks, 3 or 4 shadow tanks, and some zone raiders. Let's see what happens with this. There's 1 EMP grenade, but I think I used that a bit prematurely. The buzzer swarm support power comes down, but fortunately my zone raiders or shadow tank dealt with that nicely. That was critical, and now these forces are moving in. Those plasma missile batteries tank so much damage. More plasma missile batteries coming in. I see the mastermind, he takes over one of my mammoth tanks, and I really didn't like that. I'm going to pay dearly though. I lose like 7 or 8 hammerheads to that AA defense, but the silver lining is one of my zone raiders ranks up to heroic. I use the overload beam on that shadow just before it dies, and I have this heroic zone raider. There's an elite one back there as well. This army of APCs and shadow tanks is thinning out very quickly. APCs falling, and it's just leaving me with these units left. There's a zone raider that's heroic. So long as I have a zone raider there that is heroic, I have a chance to take this game. I also see one of those hammerheads there has a zone raider inside. I can't afford to lose more of those units. I can't rebuild them either, because I don't have a tier 3. And these tripods back there trying to crush my army, not being able to do so. The buzzer hives are being shielded by these structures. There's still 2 drone ships to deal with, so I am in a huge mess here. But with ample micro, my zone raiders can seal this, but it's, you know, 1 mistake and I can lose. Just losing that 1 heroic zone raider, and I can't really come back from this game, because I only have that 1 base. My opponent has way more to his name. But the drone ship ultimately does fall, and that means there's going to be no more buzzer hives coming down. These zone raiders will clean up shop. There's only 3 tripods there, 2 of which are on the very low health. and the Zone Raiders will clean up and finish the job. And I thought that was an extremely tense and insane comeback. I couldn't believe my eyes. I could not believe my eyes when I won that game. The way that game started and the way it ended was just insane. I don't think a game like this, especially a ZOCOM versus Scrin game, has had that series of events happen. But yeah, look at that eco discrepancy there. Quite incredible. Now, the key thing there was baiting that rift gen and then re-establishing my hammerheads with Zone Raiders. I guess the key is to switch between having them in the air and having them on the ground. It took me a while to upgrade power pucks, but in the end, that upgrade was definitely worth it. My Zone Raider that promoted to heroic probably wouldn't have survived without that power packs upgrade. So it's important to get all the upgrades, even those tungsten shell slingshots, allowing me to do damage that would have cost me the game if I had not done. So those devastated warships, if he had 1 or 2 in that fight, it would have been a big deal. But he couldn't rebuild his tier 3 because I sniped it with that Commando and that attack in the north. So he was kind of forced to push with those gunwalkers, with those tripods, with that base push, which was the right thing to do. But ultimately, I did come through in that game, and I hope you all enjoyed that game, guys. So this is going to be me, masterleaf, and if you enjoyed the game, then don't forget to hit the like button, and I would like to thank everyone who has been supporting me on Patreon. A huge thanks to you guys, because I wouldn't be making videos like this or patching the game, keeping my 4K mod updated without your support. So I really do appreciate that. And yeah, that's all I have to say, guys. This is going to be me, masterleaf. Peace out.